Hey, YouTubers. I got a comment on my Old Covenant, New Covenant video from Kasef Silver, and he says the books of the New Testament were written decades after Jesus died, and that is true. Jesus was a Jew, kept all the Torah of Moses, and encouraged his followers to do the same. Uh, no argument there. Jesus was a Jew. He kept the Jewish law. Um, whether he encouraged all of his followers to do the same, one example, I think about him going to the Syrophoenician widow and doing a miracle there. I don't know that. I mean, she wasn't a Jew. I don't know that he encouraged her to keep the law. But I understand what you're trying to say. Matthew 5:17 through 19 is interesting. I'd like to go there for a moment. Back in 17, Jesus says, "Do not think that I came to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish, but to fulfill them." My understanding, when that was fulfilled, was I think of Jesus on the cross when he says, "It is finished." His role was completed. Verse 18 says, "For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota nor a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished or finished." And so, my understanding of Scripture is when Jesus died on the cross, when all was finished, his mission as the Messiah was on earth was finished. Not that he's not the Messiah anymore, but his mission coming to earth. I understand that being the passing away of the law. Now you have this prophetic language, heaven and earth passing away. I don't feel that language is necessarily literal because it's used in the Jewish prophecies in a figurative sense. For instance, when the Lord prophesies through Isaiah against the nation of Egypt, talks about heaven and earth passing away, and we know that judgment already came about. So when we see heaven and earth passing away in the New Testament, we do have examples of prophetic language that has already been fulfilled using that same language. So I don't say that, I don't see how that causes an issue. Jesus did, however, say in verse 19 that the laws and commandments should not be relaxed while they were still in existence, and certainly that's true. Now, the other thing that you brought up was whether or not the covenant, the new covenant, would be applying to Christians or not. And there's some interesting language that I'd like for you to consider. One is the promise God made to Abraham in Genesis 22:17 and 18, where he says, "I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of heaven and the sand which is on the seashore, and your seed shall possess the gate of their enemies." And verse 18 is interesting. It says, "In your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice." So God made Abraham a promise that one day all the nations of the earth, not just the Jews, but all the nations of the earth would be blessed through his seed or through his descendants. And so I see that as being a prophecy of the new covenant, including not just the Jews, but all the nations. Another interesting thing to consider is Hosea chapter 1 and verse 9 and through 11, where the story of Hosea is the prophet who takes the harlot to be his wife, and she keeps cheating on him. And the imagery there is how the Jewish people kept cheating on God and kept breaking the covenant that God made with them at Sinai through Moses. And the imagery there is like a cheating wife, a wife that always cheats on you, but God keeps taking her back. And in Hosea 1 verse 9 it says, "Then the Lord said, call him Lo Ami, for you are not my people, and I am not your God." And this is going to be the name of one of the children that is going to be birthed through this harlot that he takes as a wife. Verse 10, "Yet the Israelites will be like the sand on the seashore, which cannot be measured or counted. In the place where it was said to them, 'You are not my people,' they will be called sons of the living God." So here you have a group of people who were previously not God's people, but now they're going to be called sons of God. Verse 11, "The people of Judah and the people of Israel will be reunited," and that seems like the language that we see in Jeremiah 31 about the new covenant made with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. "They will appoint one leader and will come up out of the land. for great will be the day of Jezreel. Now let's go to chapter 2, verse 23 of Hosea. Hosea 2:23. I will plant her for myself in the land. I will show my love to the one I called not my loved one. I will say to those called not my people, you are my people. And they will say to me, you are my God. And so here we have an illustration about in the future, people who were not previously God's people under the previous covenant made through Moses, these people are now going to be God's people. Also, Romans 2:29, which I know is not an accepted Jewish scripture, but it's Paul's letter to the Romans. He says, "No, a man is a Jew who is one inwardly, and circumcision is a circumcision of the heart by the Spirit, not by the written code. Such a man's praise is not from men, but from God." So the idea is that it's not in the new covenant. It's not about all the circumcision, not all about the rules. One other thing I want you to consider is in Isaiah chapter 2 and verse 2. There's an image about a new spiritual Zion, a spiritual Israel, founded on the mountain. The imagery is used there for a mountain. It says, in the last days, the mountain of the Lord's temple will be established as the chief among the mountains. It will be raised above the hills, and all nations will stream to it. And so we have this image of a mountain with streams representing all the nations flowing to the mountain. So it's not just the Jews that are flowing to the mountain, it's all the nations of the earth. Just some things to consider. I tried to use mostly Old Testament scriptures that are commonly accepted among the Jews, because I understand you're coming from a Jewish perspective there. I would ask that anybody make comments below. If you're Jews, I'd like to see Jewish scriptures. If you're Christian, maybe you can think about some other Old Testament scriptures that allude to the fact that Gentiles or other nations will be included in the new covenant. Thanks, and I hope this was helpful.